All right, let's get a move on and bring on board a special guest. We've got Rahul Malhotra, who is joining in. He's the Director, India Technology, Media and Internet at Bernstein, to give us a flavor of all of the big checks that Reliance Industries has recently signed, how it's riding the digital wave and what the future holds for the company with respect to the massive deals that it has currently signed. Rahul, appreciate you taking the time out and many thanks for joining in. Just going by the number of checks that Reliance Industries has managed to sign in the last few weeks and months when it's been a rather tough time, give us a sense as to what the outlook is on the company's ARPU potential as well as how you see their services revenue, because I believe you're of the view that it could double in the next 3 years.
Ajay, so I think first to look at what have they achieved, and it's incredible the kind of funding that they have received over the COVID times. But also, I think when we look at the broader market, and it's very interesting that the kind of services Jio Platform has, close to 10, 15 services that they have, we see a fairly large TAM for across all of these services, close to 5 billion plus total addressable market. And from our view, I think the core services around retail e-commerce, around payments, around the content OTT side of the business, we believe this is a large total addressable market that they potentially are looking at, which is close to a $2 trillion market across the e-commerce opportunity, retail opportunity, the OTT content, as well as the platform from a payments perspective. And India obviously is a fairly attractive market after the US and China, and for all of these investors, global investors from the US and the Middle East, it looks from their perspective, it's an opportunity to tap a market which has close to 600 million internet users, close to 700 million smartphone users, a market where e-commerce is growing at 30% plus, and payments continues to grow strongly. So I think from how we look at the market, I think this entire unlocking of a 2 trillion market opportunity is what excites a lot of these investors to look at the Jio Platform opportunity. And also, I think when we compare that to global parallels, markets in the US and in China, what comes out is that players that are platform oriented and are building platforms around it, tend to take a lot of market share. And we've seen Amazon in the US with a 40% plus e-commerce market. We've seen Alibaba in China having 60% plus e-commerce market, but also that has driven a very strong digital advertising market as well as a very strong payments market. So both being 50% plus for Alibaba. So I think from our perspective, the investments. Telecom obviously is a core for Jio Platform. That's where the core business is, and that's the floor for a lot of these investments coming in. But I think the additional value that is going to be driven from the new apps or the new ecosystem that's getting built around retail e-commerce, around payments ecosystem, and as well as the OTT and the advertising spends is fairly unique. And I think that makes a very large opportunity. And it's interesting for the investors to look at this and over the next 5 years see a very strong market share build up for Reliance across these spend areas.
Rahul, thanks a lot for joining us. It's indeed a pleasure chatting with you on what is turning out to be one of its kind investing opportunity for investors. Especially here in India, because they get to play the Jio Platform via Reliance Industries stock. You have looked into the numbers of, what are the possibilities which could unfurl for Jio Platforms in terms of numbers 5 years far out. And, the investment pitch made by the company as well to these marquee investors who are long-term oriented 5-7 years far out would be something to think about. Because right now, over 75% of the revenues of Jio is mobility and data. How do you see that change over the next 4-5 years? What is the potential of Jio Platforms to earn in next 4-5 years in your view?
I think it's significant. I think the markets they are tapping and potentially looking at we looked at in our report on the e-commerce retail market, which is going to be a 1.2 trillion market in 2025. The payments market is going to be another significant market at $700 billion in 25. And again, the OTT advertising market going to be a close to $100 billion market. So I think beyond the wireless and the mobile opportunity, there is an entirely larger opportunity that's potentially possible. And as the ecosystem develops and they build the entire monetization, across the platform, across the e-commerce market, where they're working with the Kirana stores and the JioMart opportunity, and that's a huge opportunity with 30 million Kirana stores, and if they can penetrate to a large extent and digitize all of these Kirana stores and build that JioMart platform in a big way, one could anticipate that the entire Jio Platforms ex telecom could also be a fairly significant part of the entire revenue potential or monetization potential in the next 5 years. And I think, considering the opportunity in e-commerce, which we think is going to be a 130, 140 billion market, with the opportunity on the payment side, I think this entire ability of having Facebook as a partner, they bring in the technology capability as well as, they act as the messaging and the onboarding for the smaller businesses or Kirana stores. And then when the transaction's happening, they manage the entire transaction to WhatsApp Pay. So I think a lot of those monetizations engines have to fire. And obviously it's early stage for that as this business executes. But I think in the next 5 years, that will be a large part of the entire Jio Platform story.
Right. The other day, somebody was telling me, one of the analysts, that this is one of the largest pre-IPO placement done by any tech company globally, ahead of some of the American and Chinese companies as well. But in 5 years' time, Rahul, in your view, the way Jio Platform evolves into a technology play, what kind of multiples do you think the street would assign it, or would it start going in the territory of? What kind of margin profile would a mature Jio Platform have, say 4-5 years far out, in your view?
Yeah, so Ajay, I think it's, again, it's still the margin profile will build up over time. And, if you see and compare to platforms like Alibaba in China, they have a EBITDA of, close to 25-30%. So I think those are the parallels one could look at, from a entire capability set or from a platform set that will build up over the longer term perspective. But again, I think this, once execution starts happening, and we look at parallels with Amazon in the US, and and as they're building the advertising model with the e-commerce model, we looked at the China markets with some of these large platforms, Tencent and Alibaba there. So you potentially see a fairly strong margin profile as you kick in e-commerce in a big way, and pull in the advertising revenues that start coming in. As brands start using this entire network of Kirana stores potentially, I think the margin profile expansion is definitely possible. And from where Jio Mobile is, we potentially see very strong margin profiles in both for Alibaba in China and in the US for Amazon. So I think there is obviously expansion that's possible if it's executed well.
Rahul, one last question. I was going through your notes and I did see, 1 to 2 year far out forward earning estimates for the company. But would you care to share how do you think the earnings per share could look, say, by 2024-25? Would you have it handy?
So Ajay, I don't have it handy with me, but I think the way it will drive earnings is obviously the Jio the entire the mobile wireless angle of it will continue to drive a bulk of the earnings, while the e-commerce and some of the other platform business start building in. So I think initially there'll be some investments in those models, so the profitability and the earnings metrics will take time to develop. But I think on a more longer term, in a 5-year basis, if you look at the model, we believe, I think it's going to be a fairly strong growth on the earnings for both, for Reliance as part of the Jio Platforms business. So I think, it has to be based on how the execution happens. Globally, we have seen players who are purely into the e-commerce as well as on the platform business having very high margins, because what happens is that you have access to 400, 500 million users, and on the other side you have a very strong the network on e-commerce with Kirana stores, and effectively you can drive a lot of monetization potential, and that is typically high margin business. So not delving into exact numbers, but we believe there's a very strong potential of margin expansion from here.
Right. All right, Rahul, we'll let you go. One of our, viewer analyst friends who was just watching the show said this could perhaps be India's answer to FANGs. But on that note, thanks very much for joining us today. That was Rahul